Hi, Dan.
Hi, Tatiana. How are you today?
I'm doing quite well. How are you today?
Very well. Very well.
So, welcome to the second installment of the new series that I'm calling Company Insights, which is a very uncreative name, but I figured it gave us more leeway for future content. But the idea here is to get to know the members of the leadership team a little better, specifically around their jobs and what it is that they do. So, that's the
Sounds
idea.
good. I watched Tate's video with interest, so I know more about Tate now than I ever probably wanted to know. But
You didn't know what he did for his job before you watched that
ah,
video?
some things.
A little bit. So, how long have you worked for Consumer Protection BC?
Well, I've actually just passed an anniversary. I believe May 26th was the day that I started, and that was back in 2014. So I've actually been here for now just over 7 years.
What?
Prior to that, yeah, if you can believe it.
Oh
Prior
God,
to
sorry,
that, I
this
lived
is
in
blowing my mind.
Yeah. Prior to that, I lived in Abbotsford and I worked with Tourism Abbotsford. I was their executive director. And prior to that, I actually lived in the north in Prince George and I worked for Northern British Columbia Tourism. So prior to coming here, I had a career as a senior executive in the tourism sector.
Sorry, I'm still like mind blown about how long it's been.
S-
I remember
Seven
meeting you.
years. Yeah.
Okay, then. Sorry, what?
The very first day I arrived, I'll never forget. I arrived to Jackie singing in the hallway to me, welcoming me to Consumer Protection BC, and it was one of those things where I was pretty sure that I was in the right place, and I just sort of followed her in, and she's been singing ever since. So thank you for the warm welcome, Jackie, all those years ago.
So you were pretty sure you were in the right place, like literally, but then also figuratively.
Literally and figuratively, and even if I was
Yeah,
in the wrong place, there was music. So what the heck?
you would have stayed. You'd been like,
I
forget
would
that other job. I'm going here.
go here. Sounds better here.
Yes, well, we are lucky to have her and her singing, and now we have it virtually, so that's an
Yes,
added
we do.
bonus. So tell us about your job here with us. Like, what are your key responsibilities?
Well, right now, 3 times a day, I'm training for the next Leadership Olympics because you just can't rest on your laurels, right? You got to be ready to go and keep those guys in second and third, and I guess in Tate's place, sort of fourth place in the back there. So, um, no,
Important stuff.
yeah, important stuff. I suppose first and foremost, the leadership team, myself included, have a responsibility to help and support and guide the teams that they are that report to them. So currently, that's obviously you and your team in comms and external engagement, and of course Trevor's team in finance. But over the years, Rob has had me actually work on various different teams. So I've been involved in HR. Early on, I was responsible or engaged during the Iris upgrade. I guess that was about 4 or 5 years ago now. I've been responsible for HR, for government relations, for film classification. So quite interestingly, the leadership team moves around to different responsibilities, and my experience has shown that that's relatively unique within organizations. Usually, senior leadership gets sort of bookended into a space, and that's kind of where you stay for your time within that organization. Responsible for corporate strategy and business planning. That's probably my number one responsibility. So the business plan kind of falls into my area and broad corporate strategy. Anything that's sort of organizational wide, I tend to get involved in. So, for instance, areas of principal risk, business continuity management, facility management, records and records management, those kinds of things that kind of work across the organization. Sort of related to that, I act as our information and privacy officer. That's a delegation from the board chair through Rob to me to act in that function. Performance reporting. So mostly to the board, I provide quarterly reports, but also I'm engaged in the annual report and other external reports as well. And then I kind of do what Rob tells me to do on a annual, weekly, and monthly basis. And Rob often gives me time limited projects. So I think probably the most current example of that is he's asked me to build a bit of a master schedule where we're trying to incorporate people's sort of hopes and preferences related to what return to work will look like once the pandemic is over. So again, that's one of those sort of cross-organizational projects. I have some time to work on it. I collected all the data and have put it forward in a report to Rob, and he's mulling it over right now. So that's kind of the core bits and pieces. It certainly is different every day. I tend to focus on different things for different reasons and in different ways, and that kind of keeps my job, I think, interesting and appealing.
So what does your average day look like? Recognizing with all those different things, no day is the same, but just give me a sense. Like, what was yesterday like for you?
Sure. So I usually get up. I don't know if this is early or late. It seems like it's fairly late compared to some of the other people within the organization, but I usually get up around 7 or maybe 7:30. I tend to have breakfast and I open up my to-do list for that day and sort of reflect on what it is I have to accomplish and make sure I have the right amount of time set aside. If there's anyone I need to connect with, I need to double check to make sure they're available and sort of all of those sorts of things. Then probably have a shower, and typically I would obviously go into the office, ride my bike or take the bus. But
Okay, I'm going to stop you. I meant your average work day. I
I,
don't need to know about your breakfast.
I get it. Well, breakfast. I think this is important because my workday starts at breakfast. Like I do work at breakfast. Um, and then, as much as I just said, I focus on a bunch of different things. What I've found over my career is that if you focus on a bunch of different things simultaneously, you tend to trip yourself up and get confused. So what I try and do is for each day, I try and come up with a goal for that day. And usually that goal includes probably one meeting. Whether it's meeting with you and your team about something, or maybe the business recovery team meeting. I try not to have more than one meetings in a day, but I try and have one project that I work on each day, one area of focus, so I can sort of pour my interest and energy into that, and try not to get distracted by other things. Anytime I try and put too many items on my to-do list, I wind up at the end of the day going, "Oh my goodness, I didn't actually get anything finished. I only got a whole bunch of things started," and that's not a good way to sort of be productive. I do often take breaks in the afternoon and go for a bike ride or a run or something like that, and then come back to my work after dinner. So I tend to have days that sort of start a bit earlier and end a bit later, and that gives me sort of the ability to stay energized. But also by expending that day a little bit, I'm able to capture the people that tend to work earlier in the day, and I also tend to be able to engage with the people that work later in the day. So that just kind of seems to work for me.
So if
Yeah.
we're going to get specific, what is your favorite job function besides working with me?
Yeah, well, of course, that's my favorite. I think my favorite function is game show host. I love it when I get to.
Is that in your job description though? I don't
I,
know. Maybe
it's
it
some,
is.
it is. It's one of those time limited jobs that Rob assigns to me. No, this is kind of an easy one for me to answer. I really like the work when I get an opportunity to work across departments within the organization, not just because I get to see people that I don't regularly see on sort of my day-to-day work, but I just like the process of trying to understand what people's preferences and needs are, and then compiling them into something that sort of works for everyone, and then move forward with trying to find a solution. A good example was the recent work I did with the folks over in Burnaby as we were trying to look at maybe acquiring a new office space. So acquiring the office space and looking at leases and buildings and things like that, that was a relatively simple piece. The more complicated, and for me the more fun piece, was sitting down with the working group and the folks over in Burnaby and trying to understand how they work, when they work, what are their preferences related to their office space and secondary space, and even more importantly, where were people different and where were different priorities and how could we blend those together. And in situations like that, you'll never get a perfect solution, but I just find the process very, very fascinating, and I think that's where I've really felt like I've had some value, but really sort of feel rewarded when those things come together. And many people have worked on a project and they can all look at it at the end and say, well, maybe that's not exactly how I would have done it, but I see my needs represented and reflected in what came, and I feel good about the final answer.
Okay. So my last question,
Yeah.
what were you going to say?
Of course, in that case, the minute we finished that project, we all basically went and worked from home. But so be it.
Right. So be it.
We did.
So what is something that people often get wrong about you? So I'm talking about, who you are, personality, not your job function.
Yeah, almost everybody spells my name wrong. So for some reason, they don't get Stephenson right. But anyways, no, that's just joking. You know, I don't actually think people get much wrong about me. For better or for worse, I kind of am who I am, and I sort of lead with my personality and sort of lead with all my strengths and all my weaknesses. And a lot of people over time may have either liked or not liked me, but I don't think they've ever been confused by me. I think they kind of know who I am, kind of out of the gate, and I think that's a good thing from time to time. It's also sometimes a challenging thing, from time to time to kind of be so open and expose my personality so much, especially as I've moved into working at Consumer Protection BC, coming from the tourism industry where people's personalities were sort of on display. That was kind of what tourism is all about. It was an adjustment here, sort of trying to be a little more subtle and a little more thoughtful in terms of how you connected with people within the organization. I do know that some folks seem to think some of my ideas are a bit odd. Like, no one likes the idea you should be putting gravy on vanilla ice cream, but what I found out is no one's actually tried it. So until somebody actually tries that, I'm really not even listening to them.
Okay. Something that people may not know about you, and I'm going to get this term incorrect, so you can correct me,
Right.
is that you have like a personal guidance document or mantra. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
It used to be on your bulletin board.
Mhm.
What have you called it?
Well, I suppose it's just my own personal values. I spent some time at Cornell University when I was with my previous job and did some leadership work there. And they didn't focus on sort of leadership techniques like, checklists and motivational speeches. They actually focused on learning who you were and understanding what your core values were and building leadership in an authentic way. So they challenged us over a whole week to try and define who it is that we were and how we made decisions and what was important to us. And that of all the training I've taken and all the education that I've done, that was probably one of the most powerful things. Not only because at the end of the day, I was able to figure out sort of what was important to me, but I was surprised by what was important to me. I'd never sort of thought about myself in that way. So yeah, it's something that's really powerful for me. So for instance, one of my values is to seek beauty. And I don't mean beauty in the sense of what people look like or things like that, but beauty in my environment and in my space. So at work, if I'm working on an Excel spreadsheet, not only do I want the Excel spreadsheet to be functional, but I want it to be easy to read and in my case, sort of elegant and beautiful that people can look at and go, wow, that's an amazing document. Or when I'm out in the world, I'm trying to find amazing spaces, beautiful bridges or beautiful sunsets or things like that. And that sort of that pursuit of seeing beauty is just something that, for instance, really resonates with me and keeps me motivated.
Well, thank you for those insights
Yeah.
into you and your job. And so that's all I got. So thank you for your time today.
Excellent, no problem at all. I guess Shahid's up next, eh?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I assume so because we've already spoken to Tate. So
Awesome.
yes.
Awesome.
Well, have a wonderful day and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Tatiana. Bye, everybody.
Bye.